My name is Jan. I've been involved since the very beginning in the developments of ISCC, and in the last few years I was or still am responsible for the development of ISCC PLUS, which grew considerably. The certification system which we run, like I would say, in the past 4 years in particular. Now, today, I would like to cover the following. I would like to start giving you a brief overview on ISCC in general, and then in particular on what we do with ISCC PLUS. After that, I would like to introduce you to different traceability and chain of custody approaches that we have under ISCC PLUS and that exist in general. And then I wanted to go into a bit more detail on the mass balance approach and different attribution approaches, because I think this is key to your industry and key to scale up the circular economy and the bioeconomy. I would like to briefly talk about some legislative developments, also on mass balance, for example, and then explain the use of logos and claims by companies, and on-product logo use even, and on-product claims under ISCC PLUS. So as a quick overview and starting point here on ISCC, so it's a truly global system. Today we have around 12,000 valid certificates. We are active in more than 130 countries. Out of these 12,000 certificates, around 4,600 of these are ISCC PLUS certificates. That's a system which is relevant to all of you. We are cooperating as ISCC currently with 68 certification bodies. So these are the third-party certification bodies which take our system, our standard, our procedures, and do the audits of companies on site and also issue the certificates based on our system. And for sure, these certification bodies need to fulfill a lot of requirements to set up the cooperation. And in particular, certainly they need to work together with qualified auditors. And these auditors are being qualified by us, by ISCC, via different types of trainings and educational formats that we offer as ISCC. So auditors, for them, certainly it's a must to participate in certain trainings, but also companies can for sure join these trainings if it's of relevance to them, for example, because they want to become certified. ISCC is a truly multi-stakeholder organization, a truly multi-stakeholder certification system. And I think this is very important because this massively increases the credibility and the recognition of the system with companies across the value chain, with brand owners, but also with non-governmental organizations, and in the end also with regulators and with national authorities. So we really involve in our multi-stakeholder process and in the entire development process of ISCC, business and industry, non-governmental organizations and governmental organizations, and certainly also research and academia. So it's a science-based approach which we follow here. And I think this approach here with this multi-stakeholder setup, although it requires a lot of efforts, lots of meetings, lots of discussions, but we do that in a very efficient way. And I think this has been key to the success of ISCC. So I think without this broad global stakeholder dialogue, we would not have been able to develop our different systems and to have such a large outreach by now. And I also believe that this really differentiates us from most of the other schemes around. Here you can see some examples of members of the ISCC Association. And the association actually is the body which is responsible for this global multi-stakeholder dialogue. So you can see here we have companies from across the entire value chain, really from farm plantation via all the big agriculture trading houses, via the entire mineral oil companies, petrochemical, chemical companies, but also converters, packaging producers, big brand owners, etc. And also non-governmental organizations and research organizations which also support a lot the development of ISCC. How do we run this multi-stakeholder dialogue? In essence, we have regional stakeholder committees and technical stakeholder committees. Regional committees we have for North America since 2012, for Europe, for Latin America, and for Southeast Asia. For example, the next North American meeting will take place in Chicago in November this year. And via these regional meetings, we try to better understand what the concrete needs in these regions are, what are the regulatory developments, which companies are joining, which are potential customers, and we all meet up on a regular basis at least once a year in these regional meetings. And normally we have anything between, let's say, 80 and 400 participants in those meetings. In addition, we have technical stakeholder committees on different topics, different markets. The one I would like to mention here is the technical stakeholder meeting Circular Economy and Bioeconomy, which is active since 2020. And this is a group which supports the further development of ISCC PLUS, and certainly also the one which is relevant for you here today. And for sure, you can also join this meeting as a stakeholder. So coming back to the different systems that ISCC is running. In essence, we have three big certification systems to support compliance with legal and voluntary sustainability requirements. First of all, it is ISCC EU. That's a system which is recognized by the European Commission for renewable transport fuels, for renewable electricity, heating and cooling under the European legislation. So it's also active on a global scale, but for all different types of fuels which are covered by this regulation that enter the EU market. The second system is what is called ISCC CORSIA. That's a system for sustainable aviation fuels under the International Civil Aviation Organization, which is running this carbon offsetting program that has recognized ISCC as a system to show compliance with the sustainability and greenhouse gas requirements. And with this system on a global scale, we certify value chains for sustainable aviation fuels. Then a very big system of ISCC is the ISCC PLUS system, where we certify circular and bio-based chemicals, plastics, packaging, textiles, and many other materials, products, markets. It's also being used for sustainable fuels which are not part of the EU regulation. It's also being used for food and feed, and for example, for renewable feedstock from renewable energy like hydrogen, power-to-X mechanisms, etc. So this is the core system here for today because it is covering recycling and also the use of bio-based materials in your industry. In addition, we are recognized, for example, in Japan for certain programs. We are mentioned in the legislation by now in South Korea, for example, for certain programs. But these are still, I would say, minor systems. So now the question maybe comes up, why do we actually need certification to further grow the bioeconomy and the circular economy? I think the first reason is because we somehow need to know what type of raw material has actually been used, or what type of non-conventional raw material, like waste and residues versus virgin material. So this information needs to be known. Has it been a recycled material? Has it been a biogenic waste and residue, etc.? So this information at the beginning of the value chain must be verified, and this information for sure needs to then travel across the value chain. So the traceability must be established from the point of origin of a waste and residue all the way downstream to the final product. And to do this, you need to decide about the type of chain of custody approach you are using. And today it's here about the mass balance approach, where you mix non-conventional certified raw material with conventional material and then use different attribution methods. I will explain a bit more later on, to attribute these certified materials to certain outputs based on rules which ISCC is providing to come up with the correct volumes and conversion factors throughout the entire value chain. If you want to do certified carbon intensity calculations and come up with a carbon footprint, then certification certainly also has a role to play. And when it comes to virgin biomass, like directly from farm, plantation, forestry, then certainly the ISCC sustainability and no deforestation requirements are key, and they are also being verified all the way upstream then. And if all of this is in place and you have certified value chains established, then you can determine, for example, recycling rates. You can report on this basis to your stakeholders, to authorities. You can make claims, verified claims to your customers, to consumers, to other stakeholders, and for sure you can use the ISCC on product logos and claims based on that. So as a quick overview, what ISCC PLUS is all about in a nutshell. So it's a well-established system by now with a broad raw material coverage and a broad coverage of final markets already. So you don't need to start from scratch. There are more than 4,000 companies which are certified. Raw material is available. So if you want to become certified as well, you can get started, because it by now may already be easier to find certified suppliers and also certified customers who have an interest in receiving certified products. We cover with ISCC PLUS several chain of custody options, so not only mass balance. This may be important when you look at different types of value chain setups, because sometimes you can go beyond mass balance even. And it's also important with respect to different types of mass balance attribution approaches, which regulators may ask for. What is also important is that ISCC PLUS is covering chemical recycling, but we also cover mechanical recycling routes for the circular economy. So we don't do either or. We know about the discussions, between both and certain hierarchies, and that the chemical recycling should be a complementary route in our opinion, but for sure with ISCC PLUS you can cover both. It's in the end the certification of the entire value chain, which makes it very credible and traceable. Only at the very end of the value chain for the brand owners, we have also a licensing system in place, so that brand owners can easily make claims under ISCC PLUS and can use the ISCC PLUS on product logos. So this has helped us to involve all the big brand owners, and by that to create additional demand for ISCC PLUS. I've already talked about the importance of the multi-stakeholder dialogue for ISCC. Now within ISCC PLUS, we have this technical stakeholder committee for the circular economy and bioeconomy. This is being led by two co-chairs. One is Frederick from Unilever. The other one is Jason from the US, actually from Eastman. And they support the stakeholder process. We discuss with them the agenda of the meetings, the follow-ups, etc. And within this technical stakeholder group, we have different working groups, one on mass balance and attribution, one on logos and claims and making ISCC PLUS more consumer facing, and one actually on greenhouse gas emission and carbon footprint certification. And these working groups, they are smaller than this big group where we sometimes have a few hundred participants. Here we normally have like anything between 10 and 40 participants so that we can really go into technical discussions and develop new approaches under ISCC PLUS. For sure, on a regular basis, we have additional stakeholder discussions with regulators, for example, the European Commission, right now a lot on the single-use plastic directive, etc. And we are very active beyond that at conferences and with lots of bilateral discussions. And the stakeholder dialogue also means that we do public consultations. So when we change the system or develop something new, we always discuss this in the stakeholder group. And they also provide feedback to us in a way that companies or industries ask for something new which we can develop. Then sometimes we do a project with different value chain partners to do pilot projects, etc. But in the end, once it enters the system, it goes for public consultation. Right now, for example, we have carbon footprint certification for food and agriculture in the public consultation. Ocean-bound plastic guidance we have in there, and also thinking about social criteria, some additional social criteria for certain setups and certain regions, which would also go for public consultation. This is where we stand with respect to the number of ISCC PLUS certified companies. As you can see, we started ISCC PLUS actually some years back here already, but we must say that everyone was focusing more on ISCC EU, and developing a momentum for ISCC PLUS only took place in 2020, 2021, where this really started to pick up with the use of circular, biocircular, and also biogenic raw materials. And we continue to see here quite a relevant growth with respect to the number of ISCC PLUS certificates around the globe, and also with respect to the volumes. Coming to your industry, so the space of adhesives and sealants, we have, I would say, a large number of companies from your industry or active in your industry, which are already ISCC PLUS system users, which are certified, which make claims under ISCC PLUS. So this is a selection of some of these companies which you can see here. Coming briefly back to the raw material categories which we cover, I already mentioned bio, biocircular, circular. So bio is the raw material category under ISCC PLUS, for biomass coming directly from farm, plantation, forestry, like oil crops, sugar crops, starch crops, etc. Then we have the category biocircular. These are biogenic waste and residues. The typical example is used cooking oil. Then we have the category which we call circular. So these are in the end fossil wastes and residues. The most prominent example right now probably is mixed plastic waste, which is being recycled. And then we have this additional kind of category, which we call renewable energy derived, so hydrogen, power to X, or hydrogen derivatives, etc. And once you have these raw materials certified, then they can certainly enter these complex value chains of the chemical industry, all the way to converters and brand owners. And then we cover, I would say, more or less all relevant final markets, like plastic products, plastic packaging, automotive, building and construction, the tire industry, food markets, medical products, textiles, etc. So in all these areas, ISCC PLUS is being used by now, and for sure also for adhesive and sealants. So providing a bit more of an overview on how this actually works in practice. So kind of with a maybe a bit simplified value chain here for waste and residues. So we start out at the point of origin of a waste and residue. We do not certify all these points of origin because this simply would not be possible, or the efforts would be much too high, because these can be very small scale and very scattered. But they all need to become part of the ISCC PLUS certification approach, and they do this via self-declarations. And then the first certification takes place at what we call here the collecting point of these waste and residues. Quite often, this is also already a processing unit. And these are being certified with on-site audits. And if necessary, sample audits can take place at point of origin so that they can be covered as well. And once these are certified, then based on the material they receive from the points of origin, they can directly sell on, or they can already have conversions in place and then sell, in this case, the naphtha to the processing unit, a cracker in this case, which is also certified. So this here would be, let's say, circular naphtha. This processing unit, if it's a cracker, maybe producing ethylene under ISCC PLUS, so also needs to be certified. Then this may go to the next processing unit, producing acrylic acid. Then there may be a trader involved with storage. Then the traceability certainly cannot end here, so this also needs to be covered. And then sooner or later, via another processing unit, you may end here with the final product, which then either enters a product which goes to the market or may directly go to the market. And these value chains are covered via certification. Information on the raw material, the type of chain of custody, process chosen, the attribution, etc. This is being forwarded based on the ISCC rules throughout the value chain. However, these value chains for sure are not static, but once you have a valid certificate here, you can source from any other certified supplier and you can sell to any certified customer. So that once this is established, it's not static, but can change over time. Coming to the different chain of custody approaches under ISCC PLUS, we have those established and we create transparency on the approach chosen. And I think this is very important, in particular having in mind, certain discussions on whether mass balance approaches should be used or not, and what type of claims you can make under mass balance approaches compared to physical segregation, where you can determine a physical content of circular or bio-based material in output, etc. So it's very important to create transparency on these approaches and to have clear rules in place how these different approaches work. And that is the case under ISCC PLUS. So as an overview here, we have physical segregation, where at all points in time, you keep the certified material physically segregated from the non-certified or the fossil, the conventional material. Certainly a very nice approach, easy to understand, easy to make claims on, because then you can say this is 100% from circular material or 100% bio-based. But as you know better than I do, in many value chains, this is simply impossible, or costs are prohibitively high. So we need other approaches to involve big existing assets and existing value chains into the circular economy and bioeconomy, and to be able to scale up more quickly. The second general approach is what we call here controlled blending. Here you also mix certified and conventional material, but you always know the exact share of the certified material in the output. So you have a physical content, minimum physical content, which you can always guarantee and which is certified. The third approach, and for sure very prominent for your industry also, is the mass balance approach. Here you co-process and you mix certified and conventional material. But in the bookkeeping, you kind of pretend as if it would be segregated. So you have a bookkeeping on the certified material volumes, the conversion factors, and based on that, you can make claims and attribute the certified volumes to certain outputs and then make claims for these outputs. For sure, there need to be clear rules on how you attribute to different outputs, whether this is completely free or whether you need to apply certain stricter approaches. And for sure, you also need to make this transparent, that if you are making a claim for a certain output here with a certain percentage even, that this is based on a mass balance approach, so that you cannot guarantee the physical percentage in here, but that you can guarantee that an equivalent amount of raw material has entered the value chain. And that if you want to sell more outputs or go to a higher percentage, you must use the equivalent amount of additional certified material in the value chain. So that's a nice thing about the mass balance, that you can use existing value chains and assets and easily scale up with every new customer that you gain. So why mass balance? I think I have explained. It supports the transition to circular economy and bioeconomy. It allows a cost-efficient integration and a quicker scale-up. It's possible to use existing processes, existing often $1 billion assets like a cracker. They can also become part of this game and can start to scale up. So to realize the ambitious targets for the circular economy, which we by now have in many countries, mass balance is key. It's key to integrate chemical recycling as a complementing approach to mechanical recycling. And credible verification of mass balance approaches is key, because it is a complex approach, and if you use it, the volumes, the certified share must always be verified, and also how you come from the certified input to the attribution to the certified output. That's key. And via certification, you can also clearly differentiate claims under mass balance, for example, from claims under physically segregated value chains. There are some key principles. Some people believe mass balance is some type of focus pocus. This is definitely not the case. Under ISCC PLUS, we have very clear principles and criteria. For example, that we have site and scope specific mass balances. There needs to be the physical connection. Conversion factors need to be based on the real process on site. This is being verified. Claims towards customers are being verified, etc. And we must also say there's lots of experience on mass balance methodology and certification already in many other markets, from forestry to fair trade to a certain extent electricity markets are a bit similar sometimes. So there is lots of experience already, even though for the chemical industry it might sometimes be a bit more complex, but I think we see that it works as well. Coming a bit to some regulatory developments. I don't know how far you have heard about it in the US, but in Europe we have the so-called single-use plastic directive, which starts out with covering PET bottles and introducing chemical recycling, and although this is not final yet, a mass balance approach to integrate chemical recycling. Now, right now, this may not be that important because it's only covering, let's say, a small market, but it will have precedence for many other regulations to come to achieve circularity targets in many other sectors. So we have looked at this in detail since the very beginning. We are discussing with the European Commission on a regular basis. And I would say ISCC PLUS is prepared to implement what the outcome of this SUPD will be. We don't know yet exactly today, but we have done a number of pilot projects with different companies and stakeholders. We have tested different attribution approaches, etc. So that I think we are ready to implement this for these new markets which will be regulated, and also beyond that in other countries and regions, and when these circularity targets will be rolled out to further markets. As part of these discussions for the Single-Use Plastic Directive in Europe, alternative attribution approaches have been discussed. So, as you have probably heard, there is in general the free attribution when you use co-processing and the mass balance approach, which means that you have a certain share of circular naphtha entering a process. Then you have different types of outputs of this process. Some may be used as fuels, others may be used as products. Under free attribution, you can attribute all the circular input to the product you want it, to end up in. So you are able to create maximum value. You are not losing anything of this raw material except for the overall conversion factor, which needs to be taken into account. But you are not losing anything which goes to the fuel, where maybe there's no value of the circular raw material, but what goes to the fuel, you could then attribute to a product where you can generate much more value, where you can get price premiums, etc. That is a free attribution. Certainly a nice concept, but due to certain regulation, at least in Europe with the Waste Framework Directive, you are not allowed to reattribute from fuels to products, because the energetic use of such a circular raw material is not a recycling, but only a recovery. So what ends up in here needs to stay in here. So this fuel portion you cannot reattribute under the so-called fuel use excluded attribution. So these are different attribution approaches which we have tested, where we can put the requirements in place once they become part of regulations. For sure, they have certain implications on the markets and on the business, and what is feasible, what is not feasible. But ISCC will continue with the free attribution for sure, because we believe it's a great starting point. It allows companies to get started, to create value, to benefit from the use of circular raw materials, which are more costly most of the times. But should in certain regulation different attribution approaches be implemented, we will certainly also move ahead with that under ISCC PLUS as well. Briefly, let me explain the licensing scheme for brand owners. I already mentioned that at the very end of the value chain, with the brand owners who put the product on the market into the shelf, we have this licensing scheme. So it enables brand owners to communicate about certified finished goods to consumers. It empowers consumers to make responsible purchasing choices. It establishes a common language for what is being done here. It ensures traceability of finished goods at the end of the supply chain as well. And with a solid approach here, which we have established, with respect to communication, logo use, do's and don'ts in the communication, for sure we also create trust and recognition also of mass balance approaches. So you can see that this works nicely. We introduced it at the end of 21, and by now we have 21, and by now we have more than 120 brand owners licensed under ISCC PLUS. There are more in the pipeline here for this year. We have more than 2,000 products covered. ISCC PLUS has been recognized by the Climate Pledge Friendly program, by Amazon for the US, for example, but also for European markets. This is further increasing. So some nice achievements also here with the licensing for brand owners, which hopefully will push up demand as well upstream in the value chain for circular and bio-based products. So some example of ISCC certified products with on-product communication. So you see the ISCC PLUS logo here on all these products. supporting the circular economy or the bioeconomy. Sometimes you also find percentages. The mass balance approach is being explained. Sometimes you find QR codes. So it's heavily being used by now with many final products around the globe. This is a selection here of ISCC licensed brand owners. So you really see a lot of big names on here, really global brand owners who increasingly implement ISCC PLUS for certain brands under which they own and put products in the market with ISCC PLUS claims and logos on the final product. So this is very nice to see how this further develops. For sure, also off-product communication is possible with ISCC PLUS. These are some examples here from your industry as well, where this has been done successfully on the website with press releases, etc. Some more regulation to come. So in Europe, we will get the so-called Green Claims Directive, which will set the basis for making green claims to consumers. So this will be regulated in future. And one core to reduce the risk of greenwashing. And one core requirement will be that you must use third-party certification systems for the claims that you make. And therefore, we have looked in detail at these proposals here. We have had discussions with the European Commission, with DG Environment on this. And I think at least where it stands right now, we can conclude that most of these requirements are in place within ISCC PLUS already. And for sure, we continue to follow these discussions and the further developments to make sure that ISCC PLUS is compliant with such, let's say, regulation to avoid greenwashings. So that's the case in Europe. In the US, for example, it's a FTC Green Guides, and here similar approach applies. So we try to analyze that and try to make sure that we do not, with ISCC PLUS, do not violate anything here. One further aspect, final one, I would like to mention, and this is what we currently develop with ISCC, that is a so-called ISCC carbon footprint certification. So this goes a step beyond to what I have explained so far, where you make claims on the use of certain types of raw materials, for example, recycled materials. Here we have developed this because we had many system users who said, okay, I'm using biogenic raw material, but I'm using also recycled raw materials, and I am claiming that, but it can get a bit complicated to claim all the different raw material categories. And I'm doing all of this to improve my carbon footprint. So why can't I make also a carbon footprint claim? And this is what we have developed now in some pilot projects, and we are still running additional pilots right now, so that companies who use ISCC PLUS certified raw materials can also make an ISCC certified carbon footprint claim. And in addition to that, we came across to a number of setups and system users and stakeholders who said, look, I'm not using yet ISCC certified raw materials, but I've implemented decarbonization measures, for example, carbon capture and storage or carbon capture and utilization. And I want to make claims around that. And I also want to have a certified carbon footprint for this. So this is what we also cover by now under ISCC carbon footprint certification. Okay, just a quick explanation here how you can start the process. So first of all, you choose the certification scheme, in this case here ISCC PLUS. Then you need to choose one of the 68 certification bodies we are cooperating with. You need to sign a contract with the certification body so that they do the audit. Then you need to sign up in the ISCC client section. We have a special portal for that, which can be entered by the certification body, the auditor, the company, and ISCC. So by that you register with ISCC, then you get audited by your certification body. Certainly, you need to prepare for that to make sure that the audit is successful, and then you receive the certificate after a successful audit from the certification body. ISCC for sure will do its internal review, and then if everything is okay, this will be published on the ISCC website. So all certificates are public on the ISCC website, and once this is the case, you can handle certified material, you can buy and sell then under ISCC. What is also, I think, quite unique about ISCC is the so-called integrity system. Here we have our own integrity auditors who only work for us and who can double check what the companies are doing and whether they are in compliance with the ISCC requirements. So we do that on a random basis, but also when we receive complaints or indications of non-conformities or fraud, we can always send out our own integrity auditors, which definitely either remotely they can do integrity audits also or on site, and this definitely increases the credibility and the integrity of the overall system. So to briefly sum up, I think by establishing the traceability with ISCC PLUS and the raw material identity across entire value chains, by having in place clear chain of custody rules, so mass balance, segregation, controlled blending, having clear rules on that, and also making transparent what approach has been followed, by having already a very broad raw material and product coverage under ISCC PLUS, by the establishment of this robust multi-stakeholder system on a global scale, with the regional and technical stakeholder committees, by this broad market recognition, also with brand owners already, and by the high-level sustainability standard. I think based on all of that, you can make very credible and verified claims under ISCC. And I think this is really altogether the value that ISCC PLUS delivers to individual companies, to the circular economy and bioeconomy, and to entire industries. Having said that, please allow me in the very end to invite you here to 2 events. As mentioned, we are running trainings. We have our next ISCC PLUS training, where we go into all the details of what I've touched here today, in particular with respect to practical implementation. The next one is taking place here pretty soon, beginning of September, online. Then we have on October 10, that's a virtual meeting, the ISCC Technical Stakeholder Meeting on the Circular Economy and Bioeconomy. So I would say very relevant. We have a presentation from the European Commission on the Single-Use Plastic Directive. We have a presentation from the Commission on the Green Claims Directive. We have a presentation from the American Chemistry Council on the developments in the US, etc. So I think this I can highly recommend to all of you. And then as said, we also have in November the regional stakeholder meeting in Chicago, where we also have lots of information on ISCC PLUS. I will end with that. Thanks a lot for your attention. I will hand back to you, and I'm for sure available for questions now.
Jan, we do have a few questions that have come in. The first question is, how well is the mass balance concept recognized with industry, brand owners, and regulators?
Yeah, I would say by now it is well recognized, definitely within industry, because industry in this space understands very well why mass balance is required to scale up and why it is easier with a mass balance approach to integrate more alternative raw materials. Brand owners by now, I would say, understand as well. They are also interested certainly to scale up the use of circular materials, for example, and regulators have also been educated to a large extent by now. So I would say recognition has increased tremendously, which is good. And I think transparency has increased also with respect to claims. And on this basis, we hope to further scale this up.
Thank you, Jan. Can you comment on, the global acceptance of mass balance, outside of North America and EU?
Yeah, we also see very high interest, for example, in Japan. in South Korea. These are very big and important countries for ISCC. We also just had an event in South Korea. We have recognition in South Korea with the government. We have a big ISCC PLUS event in Japan in January next year. So here we have similar regulation on recycling targets as we have in Europe. So I would say in some of the Southeast Asian countries at least. Also in China, ISCC PLUS is being used quite a bit by now. So interest there is definitely increasing. We also see it, for example, from Australia, where they are implementing similar approaches as well.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jan. Can you comment on what the benefits are for the mass balance concept and if there are any other alternatives?
Well, I think other chain of custody approaches certainly are fine as well. And if you manage to have a segregated approach where you can simply say this is 100% from recycled material or this is 100% bio-based, that's a better claim, an easier claim compared to a claim which is based on a mass balance approach. But as you all know, these completely segregated value chains are extremely expensive to build up. They would need to be small scale. You would need to double all your production processes, etc. So in certain areas, in certain niches, this may be possible and is good. But in other areas, a mass balance approach is a must to efficiently, cost-effectively further increase the use of alternative materials in these value chains. Because you cannot switch, with all these big existing assets from one day to the other to 100% alternative raw materials, because technically it may not be possible, the raw material is not available, etc. But if you start with only 1%, 2%, step by step scale up, you achieve much more than only using segregated value chains. So I think different chain of custody approaches need to exist in parallel, and we need all of them if we want to really scale up the circular and the bioeconomy.
Okay. So, you talked about circular economy, and on one of your slides where you show the different brands that have the certification, you had Brita filter listed up there. Majority of those filters, after they're used, they end up in trash, and I don't think people know how to dispose of them. So how do you incorporate that during the certification for any other product?
Yes, this is to really build this circle and actually take back the waste of a certain product, in this case, the filters. This is quite often difficult, but what they are doing, it also happens sometimes also under ISCC that you really have a closed loop, but what they are doing here, they guarantee the use of waste materials, not necessarily their own waste, but waste material which they then use to build their products. And this is then being certified, the collection of the waste, the recycling of the waste, and the building into their products again. And this is what Brita in this case here is making claims for.
Oh, great, thank you. How do you see the future development in the next few years?
Well, what is definitely interesting is that today, all ISCC PLUS is doing is for voluntary markets. There's no regulation really in the space yet which is requiring ISCC PLUS. So the 4,600 certificates, companies are doing that on a voluntary basis because they see a certain benefit. They can sell to brand owners can make claims, etc. But we do see a lot of regulation to come in this space, in particular with respect to recycling targets. And in quite a number of these draft regulations in Europe, but also in many other regions, already mention the verification, the certification, because in particular, when you use mass balance approaches, you must verify in detail and on site in many cases what the percentages are of these recycled raw materials that have been used. And for this, I think we need to find a common language, a common standard. We need to have certain rules in the regulation, and these can then be implemented via ISCC PLUS. So this is what I do see to come for certain markets, but also in future, voluntary use of ISCC PLUS will continue, and we see continuous interest and growth. And I also believe that this carbon footprint certification will increase in the years to come.
Thank you, Jan. And on to our final question for the session today. What are the costs of ISCC PLUS certification, and what are the concrete benefits?
Yeah, also a good question. The cost to ISCC, the fees of ISCC, there's only a certification fee. That's this fee per certificate, which is between 200 and 2,000 euros, depending on the size of the company. So I would say this is rather low. Then there's a quantity dependent fee, which is like 10 euro cents per ton, so also very low. But on top of that, certainly you need to pay the certification body. They normally charge normal audit rates on a daily basis. Maybe for processing units, it's a 2 days audit. So also I would say still quite limited, those costs. And then certainly, especially for the initial audit, you have a certain internal cost for preparing, for making sure that everything is documented and that a company is well prepared for the certification audit. For a recertification, the efforts, I would say, then once this is established, are already lower. So I think in total it is doable, and costs, especially ICC fees, are extremely limited. And the benefits, I think, are clear. I mean, across the entire value chain, you are then able to document the use of these alternative materials and products. You are able to trace that. You are able to make verified claims that you are doing this, claims on the percentage of alternative materials being used. And you can do that all the way to the final product with a claim on the final product on the shelf, even to the consumers.
Right. Thank you, Jan. This will conclude our session today. Thank you so much, Jan, for coming in and presenting.